Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. For some reason, I'm not laughing at the song, although I find it very funny. For some reason, the monitor that we have here in the studio is on a delay. So I'm actually seeing the things that I did a while ago, which is really distracting.
It's extremely distracting.
So I'm going to mostly just ignore it. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We're live, or at least live on some sort of delay. It's March 9th, 2008. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to open up the phone lines earlier today. So for those of you who are watching after the fact or fast forwarding through announcements, who wanted to wait a half hour till the topic was over, you don't have to do that. Just as soon as I get through the announcements, we'll go ahead and have the phone number up and start taking live or slightly delayed calls. Not sure which. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road beginning at around 11, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. And the second Sunday of the month is also the board meeting, which was this morning, although the time change really kind of messed everybody up.
Yeah, it threw me off for a loop too.
So I don't know if it just wasn't publicized as much or if I was distracted by other things from this weekend, but so we'll figure out what's going on and I'll talk to the board, but none of you guys care about what's going on at the board meeting, so let's get to the rest of the announcements real quick. In addition to the Sunday morning activities in this television program, the ACA also hosts a number of social programs throughout the week, including Atheist Happy Hour, every Thursday at the Dog and Duck Pub at 17th and Guadalupe beginning at around 7 o'clock. The lecture series, as I already mentioned, and after this program's over, we've been going to El Arroyo on 5th Street. So the show's on to about 4:30. We get down there around 5 or so, and we're usually there until 7 o'clock. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. You don't have to be a member to attend. We don't have any requirements like that. As long as you're not coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, you're welcome to join us. In general, we like to, have people come down who want to have good conversations. I don't really care if you're a theist or an atheist, an agnostic, a secular humanist, a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Christian, whatever you want. One of the things that we end up talking about on the show is religious issues, obviously, but we're open to talking about all kinds of things. So the phone number is going to go up in just a moment, and you'll be able to call and talk about whatever's on your mind, and we'll talk about a few things while we wait for some calls as well. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. You can go to the website on your screen, nonprofitsradio.com, for more information about how to download the podcast and how to listen live. It's live every other Saturday from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Central. And we run an IRC chat service in conjunction with the show where those who are listening live can talk amongst themselves and contribute on occasion to the discussion that we're having. The purpose of this show is to kind of answer questions, provide an outlet for atheists in the Austin area to interact with the public, correct misperceptions about what atheism is, who atheists are, what do they believe, what don't they believe, but also to address the claims of religious people. And we're interested in what you believe, why you believe it, and why you think anybody else should. And if you have your own beliefs and you don't think that they're justifiable to anybody else, great, kudos. I tend to kind of base my decisions on what's demonstrable about the reality that we actually share, that's independently confirmable, that is things that we can come to agreement on about what is truth, what exists to the best extent that we can possibly know it. In addition to the nonprofits and the various other activities, you can also visit the ACA website at www.atheist-community.org. There's more information up there, including a frequently asked questions section. If you don't get through on the telephone today or you don't want to, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, most of the co-hosts, most of the people behind the scenes. We can't promise to answer every email, but we do answer quite a bit of them. And any feedback, comments, questions, criticisms, please feel free to forward them that way. If we make mistakes, we'll be happy to correct them. I, of course, have never made a mistake ever in the entire history of the show, so that's not true. Once or twice, somebody's emailed with a correction. And actually, there's a correction from Russell's show. Was it last week?
I believe it was last week, actually. Yeah.
He was talking about anti-Semitism, and he commented about Mel Gibson's drunken tirade against the Jews. And he made the mistake of saying it came before the Passion of Christ,
Yeah.
when actually it came after the Passion of Christ movie was done. So there's a correction. We were wrong about something. I'm sure there's other things that we've been wrong about. I'm just not so sure that people have actually bothered to tell us. And
occasionally we catch them on the show. We do have our crack team of researchers behind the scenes.
Well, we end up
every
talking.
minute and typing away and furiously searching the internet and scouring for the facts. And
Yeah.
they'll pop up every now and then.
And we end up having discussions amongst ourselves after the show, and then on email
Yes.
lists. And there are some things that are minor and not worth correcting because the message was out there. But what the big things are that I don't want to misrepresent what anybody actually believes, which is why when a caller comes in and tells me that they believe in a God, I start by asking questions. We had a caller last week who was asking, why do you always answer these, address these issues with questions and things? And in fairness, this has bugged me. It didn't bug anybody else. As a matter of fact, some people cheered. I got to a point where I actually just put him on hold and told him to shut up. And I usually prefer not to get to the point where I'm saying shut up. I prefer that we handle it differently. So maybe I handled that bad, and if so, then I apologize. But there were some problems with that discussion. One of them being there was this implication that asking questions is not as good as pretending to have answers. He was like, when you ask religious people what they believe or why they believe something, they'll give you answers. And usually it's like, an appeal to some ancient book or something. Well, I'm not convinced that those are actually answers. It may be a reason, it may be an excuse, it may be whatever justification they come up with. The problem was when I asked him why he believed what he believed, his answer was that, it was just the research has been done and the proof's out there, God exists. And when I asked, more,
specifics,
wouldn't answer.
Of course.
And the thing that I kind of discovered after the show that I wish I'd have said last week, so I'll say it this week, is given the choice between being the guy who's accused of asking questions or providing pretend answers, I'll take the former.
Yeah.
And I'd much prefer unanswered questions to unquestionable answers. And that's what religion tends to offer. Unquestionable answers, dogma. We know that God created everything. I'll talk a little bit about the pub crawl that happened and some comments that were made in discussions. But one of the guys actually commented that God is the answer to this particular question of why does the universe exist, and his justification was because we don't have any other answer and that one fits. Well, holy crap! And I asked him. I said, what that means isn't that you found an answer. It means that you found something that you think fits, and so you're not going to continue to investigate. And he, I kid you not, looked me dead in the eye and said, once I've come to the answer that God did it, why would I have to investigate any further? Well, congratulations. I'm glad you got an answer that satisfies you, and I'm happy that people like Copernicus and Galileo decided not to follow in your footsteps.
That would have definitely left us in the dark ages
Yeah.
there. God did it. I'm satisfied.
We're living on a flat earth, and the sun's going around in circles, and God can stop it. Well, Joshua can stop it with God's help. But
so why do we need to go any further?
yeah,
God will provide.
The last actual announcement is something I meant to get to earlier. Richard Dawkins will be in town here in Austin on March 19th, 7 p.m. at the Hogg Auditorium. Seats are first come, first serve, but we have been able to set aside some seats.
Yeah.
So you can email us, and I'll try and put you in contact with the person, setting everything up, and we'll see about saving some seats for people. So,
and also a quick note to go back and. Are you finished with that announcement?
Yes.
Okay. Going back to asking questions and why do you ask questions rather than give answers? Very often, and it's something that you learn doing the show, is that if somebody calls in and says, "Here's my position now, answer my question," if we get too quickly into answering, 5 minutes into it, let's say, well, that's not what I believe anyway. So, why are you arguing against this when that's not my point? My point is blah, 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 blah. And so if we just ask those questions and get it out of the way first, we're not going to waste anybody's time.
Yeah, there's a handful of kind of precepts or conditions that I put on myself. Number one, you get to define what you mean by God, or whatever your claim is. It may not be God; it may be some other supernatural nonsense, or whatever. You get to define it, because I don't want to be arguing against somebody else's belief, and then
Yeah.
you say, that's not what I'm talking about. The other reason for asking questions is so that we can get to a point of clarity about what it is that we're talking about, both in the definition and in your explanation, because people use language slightly differently. And, you may have a different definition of faith than I do. My definition ends up placing faith in the position of being nonsense, not even real. It's utter nonsense that's no good way to make a decision. You may have a completely different definition of faith, and I want to know what it is so that we're talking kind of on the same level, in the same terms.
Yeah.
And the other big reason is so many of the arguments, I'm chuckling. I'm going to chuckle. Sorry. It's not meant to be insulting. So many of the arguments for the existence of God, or arguments in opposition to certain scientific knowledge, are based on such gross misperceptions and fallacies that I find it's more useful to ask a question early rather than let them start with a fallacious argument and build up to a point where, and thus we've demonstrated God exists, and then I have to say, but let's go all the way back to the beginning because this is where you made a mistake.
Yeah.
You can construct a logically valid argument that supports the idea that God exists. It's just not a logically sound argument, and most people don't even know the difference between the two. But I'll talk more about the pub crawl and stuff later, but we actually got a caller, so
Yes.
Since we promised, we're taking calls. Is it Shane?
How you doing, sir?
How you doing, Shane?
Hey.
I'm doing great.
We're doing pretty good. What do you got for us?
I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you guys are atheists and you don't believe in anything.
No? I believe in all kinds of things. I just don't believe in gods.
I mean, my point would be that if you don't believe in anything,
Which we just said isn't the case, but okay.
But go ahead, and we'll let you finish.
if you don't believe in anything inside your heart, then why believe in anything else?
It's not a matter of not believing anything. Granted, I don't accept any supernatural claims as true, and my justification is that there's no evidence to support those claims. But there are plenty of things that I believe actually exist, and there are plenty of things that I believe in, as in believe in the efficacy of. Like, I have no problem at all believing in love. What you're basically saying is that if I'm not willing to accept gods and supernatural claims, I shouldn't believe anything?
I mean, that's basically true.
Why?
Because if you don't believe in anything, then you're nothing, and then
No, I believe in myself,
you're
which makes me
in
something. I mean, that's just
then
one
you
example.
Go back to nothing again.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense in pretty much any way. Rocks don't believe in anything, but they're definitely something. We don't believe in... An atheist doesn't believe in God. I also don't have too
And
many-
Ashley's talking.
Yes, and I'm actually... Hi. I don't believe, as Matt said, in most supernatural claims. But there's a lot of other stuff that I do believe in and do go along with. And so to say that I don't believe in anything, I mean, that's
I mean,
it doesn't mean anything.
first of all, we believe we exist.
Yeah. I exist. I believe in, love, emotions, politics.
I believe other people exist.
Yeah.
I believe we have to work cooperatively. I believe
Scientific
that
process.
we need to
But,
work together to make this life the best it can be.
Alrighty, I have another question for you,
Okay?
which is you say that you believe in love,
Sure.
Okay.
and my point is God is love, and He built the heart.
Prove it.
How can I prove something that already happened since the day of creation and the fall of man?
Well, the Civil War happened, but we can prove what happened there.
Or we can at least demonstrate enough evidence that the belief is reliable.
Yeah.
I mean, you obviously, I hate to use the word prove because it really only applies in terms of mathematics. But what we're really talking about is make a case, provide evidence and reasoned argument that justifies your claim. You claim that God is love. Some people would disagree with you. I'm willing to go with your definition. If that's the complete sum total of your definition of God, God is love and nothing else, I believe in that God. I don't believe it's an intelligent being. I don't believe that it's supernatural. Love is the label we put on emotions, which we can identify as chemical induced experiences in the brain. That doesn't belittle what's actually happening. Understanding something, understanding how flowers grow doesn't make the flower any less pretty. That's a personal assessment of the value, the endearment of an object or feeling. Love doesn't exist on its own. It doesn't, there's not some nebulous cloud of love.
Because it is a gift.
It's an experience. It's a state of mind.
Actually, I hate to correct you,
Okay.
but it is a gift that
Right.
came from above.
Okay, and what's your evidence for this?
The evidence is in the Bible,
Okay,
because there are prophecies that did come true.
I'm familiar with
Some didn't.
I'm familiar with the Bible. My question is, why do you consider the Bible to be a correct authority on matters like these? About, why do you consider the Bible to be accurate? Why do you do that and not consider the Quran to be accurate?
Because I don't believe in science by saying there are evidence.
So
of
you
the
don't
source.
you don't believe in science? Are you saying that you don't believe that? And you said you don't believe in science and evidence.
Because what I'm trying to say is that science says, well, you need proof or evidence,
right.
but
And you don't think you need evidence in order to believe things?
I mean, no, you got to have faith. You
Oh,
gotta
okay.
believe.
Then it's really simple. Then there's a big difference between you and I. I actually care whether or not my beliefs are true or false. I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. Logic, reason, the scientific method, independent confirmation, peer review.
Did you know
Those
that
are the
science
single.
leads
Hang on.
to
I
blindness?
promise I'll let
It
you
hardens
talk.
the heart.
Oh, I hit the wrong button. Call back. I promise I'll let you finish. The scientific method, logic, reason, those are the only consistently, demonstrably reliable methods we have for gaining an understanding about reality. Faith is known to be unreliable. So when we're making claims about what actually is, about what we should believe, not just I believe it and that's good enough for me, but what we as a society, what should be believed by any reasonable person, we rely on evidence and reason. You obviously don't care whether or not your beliefs are true. You care more about whether they feel good to you. That's your prerogative. I'd prefer I lived in a world where everybody kind of accepted rationality or accepted reality based on rational reasons. But I don't expect that utopia to ever arrive. So if you don't believe that you need evidence to support your beliefs, if you want to take leaps of faith, okay. I don't think that's actually what you're doing.
No, I don't think anybody actually does that.
Yeah.
They will profess those beliefs, and they will profess the Bible is inerrant. And
Right.
this is kind of getting off track of what he specifically said, but people will often say that, yes, the Bible is perfect, and it is a good moral compass, and
Yeah.
we should use that, and we should follow all its laws. But then as soon as you start getting to things like, again, stoning unruly children, they start making excuses to get out of that, and, well, we shouldn't do that because, well, that's Old Testament.
Yeah.
And, well, then what about the Ten Commandments? Well, that's a moral law, and those still apply, but ritualistic things, those don't apply. And they'll basically start hemming and hawing and making up excuses and justifications to pick the things that they already agree with.
Right.
And they'll just somehow fit the Bible into that rather than the other way around.
But even more specifically, this kind of touches on something that I've talked about. I just posted a discussion about this at ironchariots.org where we started talking about it. I used to go with, for example, Sam Harris's definition of faith, or maybe it was Sam's and it got evolved and spread around. But generally the idea was faith is the permission slip we give ourselves to believe things when we don't have a good reason. I liked that definition. I no longer accept that definition. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think I have something that's slightly better. I touched a little bit on it last week, so I don't want to go into it in too big a detail, and we've got calls that we're going to get to. They're popping up on the screen. So real quickly, belief is the state of mind where you accept that a claim is true. In order to believe something, you must have been convinced that it was true. Nobody just by default believes something. And I don't believe that anybody truly takes a leap of faith. What happens is they've been convinced. The problem is you can be convinced for good reasons and you can be convinced for bad reasons. And we are exceptionally good at fooling ourselves, and especially smart people are good at rationalizing the justifications for their beliefs. So when I first asked him, why do you believe this? His first appeal is to the Bible. But of course, when I question the Bible, the more you do that, they get back. And at some point, it just comes down to faith, just like that caller. Faith, my new definition of it, is not a permission slip we give ourselves to believe things when we don't have a good reason. Faith is the excuse we give when we're unable to explain our reason, understand our reason, or unwilling to have our reason critically examined. It's possible people believe things without ever really knowing why. We see it in election time. Oh, yeah. Why are you voting for this candidate? I'm really not sure. I got a good feeling. They have a reason. They may not be really cognizant of it. They may not be able to explain it. And they may be afraid that if it comes under critical examination, that reason will go away. And the belief itself is too important to them to do that. And that's why we get back to the appeals to faith. But that's just my theory. And remind me, I'll get back to the pub crawl later, but we got callers waiting, and I promised. So, Mike?
Hi.
How you doing?
This is a little bit like being in a Godzilla movie with the time delayed, so I have to adjust it. But anyway, my topic is the afterlife. What you were saying about faith, I think of faith as like being an automatic pilot. And that's kind of what I think that is. Anyway, I called earlier last year. I had this notion about the afterlife, and obviously you don't believe in it, right?
Right.
Right. And so, well, you don't, let's say you don't believe in it, say you don't see any evidence of it, et cetera. My theory is that if you can you agree that nothing lasts forever? If life doesn't, then nothing.
Not necessarily.
Life doesn't. I don't mean like mountains and stuff like that. But eventually, things break down, right?
Okay. Quickly, if you're only talking about life, yes, I believe that, I'm going to die off, and I think it's most likely that life will cease to exist. It's possible that the universe will continue to expand, entropy will take us to the point of heat death, and then there will be nothing alive or moving or anything else. But there'll still be matter, and there'll still be a universe that exists. It's also possible that the universe may contract and proceed kind of backwards-ish, not really in time, but in its structure, until another explosion or expansion comes. We don't know enough about it. We're looking at a very tiny fragment of time and using math and physics to understand it. But if you're just saying that it's most likely that at some point in the very distant future there'll be nothing left alive in the universe as we know it, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Well, then if we say that life, just your own, say you in particular, as an example, or me, our life comes to an end, and every endeavor we ever have comes to an end. Then, isn't the dirt nap you take after you die, shouldn't that also come to an end?
No.
As far as I am concerned, when I die, things will happen to the matter of my body that go on, but in terms of my consciousness and my mind, it's over within a matter of minutes of my heart stop beating.
Well, see, the problem is what he's actually saying. He's saying your life came to an end. Shouldn't your non-life also come to an end? And that's part of the reason why when I answered your question initially, I talked about living things coming to an end, but matter continuing to exist. Mm-hmm. So, no, my dirt nap, there's no reason for me to think my dirt nap should come to an end because there's not life there. It's just matter.
Okay. I've called before and I've said that I'm not really concerned with the existence of God and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But my concern is soul. And I kind of firmly believe that we all have a soul because, that's why I bring these questions up. But for instance, we're all separate from each other. Like, I don't know what's going on in the mind of anybody else. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so if we have that identity, no matter how many people are born, that's how many souls get pumped out. That I can't believe that something comes out of nowhere. And then...
Hey, one quick solution to that's just to stop believing in the existence of a soul.
Solves a lot of problems.
I say that kind of humorously. My thing is that okay, you're not concerned about the existence of God, and I understand that. You are concerned about souls, and that's fine. There are plenty of atheistic and pantheistic and various other religions that don't have the idea of a God, but still have some idea of a soul. I'm just wondering, what is your reason for believing that a soul actually exists, that we as individuals each have some kind of, and what is the definition of a soul? I mean, if you're talking about something that you think is transcendent or supernatural, I mean, I see no evidence for that. If you want to speak metaphorically about the human spirit or the awareness and consciousness and what makes us us, okay, I usually don't use the word soul, but I have no problem accepting that something like that exists. I just think that the best explanations that we have for those phenomena are all derived from the brain. There's nothing about who we are, what we do, what we know, what we remember, the decisions that we make, the way we feel. There's nothing about that conscious entity that can't be attributed directly to chemical, physical, electrical impulses in the brain. So what evidence is there that there's something else, that there's some soul thing that makes me me and is likely to survive after my death?
Okay, let me take this. You said these chemical impulses that stimulate the brain.
Sure.
What fired those impulses?
What fired them?
Yeah, what started? You need a starter to start an engine or to start a light bulb. What fired those impulses in your brain?
Your brain's constantly working.
I mean, from day one, from the day of your birth.
It's one of those things that I certainly don't understand, at least. But yeah, I mean, there is some kind of starter, for lack of a better term. I don't know if it's just plain biology. It's always going on, but
I mean, your brain, from the moment that the cells begin to divide and the DNA begins to do its work in building a future human being, your brain begins to develop. And at some point, it is developed sufficiently, and it has neurons and chemicals that it begins to fire. It's kind of like asking, what makes the rubber band break when I stretch it far enough? At some point, it gets to the point where the resilience of the rubber band, the tensile strength, fails and the rubber band breaks. And while I'm no expert in brain development at all, we do have enough understanding of the process. I wish this is one of those weeks where I wish we could just call up PZ Myers, and because he could explain it in a heartbeat, or maybe
there might actually be a slightly better explanation than this. My initial thought is a battery. Basically, when you make a battery, it's just two different metals or acids or chemicals that are put together. Now, in the battery making plant, they don't put these chemicals together and then somehow give it a jolt or a jump start to actually make it start producing electricity. It's just whenever you put this stuff and this stuff together, chemical reactions happen and electricity is produced.
Right.
I would think that it's possibly the same kind of things in the brain, that once you get these certain chemicals and everything together, reactions start happening.
The bigger thing is, though, and I don't know, maybe our explanation is correct, maybe you're willing to buy it, maybe you're not. My thing is that even if we couldn't explain the jump start, which I'm not convinced that there is a jump start really, but even if there was a jump start and we couldn't explain it, why does a soul work as an explanation? Why is it okay to explain something that we're trying to understand in terms of something else that we have no evidence for and don't understand?
Well, I think of it, a soul is something that gets inflamed, that nobody understands why it gets inflamed. It's like moods and hatred, fear, love, and all those things, emotions. They come, and everybody's got their own fingerprint on that, and yet we all share at the same time, we can all share a common mood. And I think it's just far more than, sometimes I believe that the brain's so busy dealing with, pick up the spoon, put it in your mouth, walk across the room, figure out your laundry list.
No, all right. I'm sorry for interrupting. I mean, of course, the brain's incredibly complex and not greatly understood, although we're learning more and more about it all the time. The brain does everything, regulates body temperature, provides all your sensory input, controls your breathing, things that you don't think about. It's not just mundane things or active things, it's conscious and subconscious. But My question, what it seems to me that you're doing, and I could be wrong, but this is the way I'm kind of reading it, is there's more going on than we're able to actually explain.
Oh, okay.
And rather than be comfortable with saying we don't yet know, but we're going to keep investigating, you're more comfortable with the idea that the soul could provide an explanation. And the question that I asked a minute ago is the one that seems most relevant. When we explain things, when we try to gain an understanding about how the universe works, we tend to explain things, the unexplained, in terms of the explained. There's a natural progress. It's we explain complex things in terms of the simpler things that make it up. We explain current events in terms of the past events that make it up, or that led to it. What we don't do, and what we're not justified in doing, is saying we don't have a good explanation for this. But here's this hypothetical, unproven thing that would seem to answer the question, even though we don't know anything at all about it. If the answer that you're supplying is less understood, potentially more complex, and indistinguishable from a number of other answers, how is it? It doesn't have any explanatory power. If you say that the reason for this is the soul, you could also say the reason for this is magic, or the reason for this is transdimensional pixies who sneak in and fire up your brain. There's no good way to distinguish between those answers to tell which one is more likely correct, which makes them all equally useless. They have no explanatory power. So I'm more comfortable saying, I don't know, and hopefully we'll find out someday, than I am saying, well, we can't explain it, so God works or soul works as an explanation, because they have no power to explain anything because they're not understood.
Okay, well, it's fair enough. So if you have a soul, say you don't believe in the soul per se, but you said there's a series of events that takes place in the brain, and then I call it a soul, you call it, say, I don't know, X or zebra or something, but you still revere that event that takes place, don't you? The way I revere soul. Like when I think of soul, I think of like soul music and people being soulful and caring about each other, helping each other out when they don't really have to.
See, I think you're talking about.
And you have that. I'm sure you guys are nice guys. I know you feel that way too. You feel it, but you don't call it soul. You call it zebra or something.
I think you're talking about the kind of metaphoric soul that I was talking about early on.
Yeah, consciousness and the human spirit and stuff like that. It is amazing. Okay. It's. I don't know if I'd use the word revere exactly, but I understand your points in that, and I would agree with it. I just don't think it's anything supernatural. I think the ability, what abilities we do have to explain how this happens, chemical interactions, make it amazing enough in itself. Again, kind of another explanation I've heard in the past is I can enjoy going to the park and seeing the trees and the flowers and stuff like that, and that's good enough for me without believing that there are fairies and elves at the bottom of it to really make it magical and special for me. I can have as much fun there and enjoy it just as much without having to rely on that to really make it special. So, again, I think how the brain works and how we work, and in communities and personally and stuff like that. I think that's amazing and justified enough of awe that I don't need a spiritual explanation for it, of God or souls.
Well, I understand. Well, I appreciate your time. I think I've gone on long enough, so I'll let somebody else talk. But thank you for your time.
Sure. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Yeah, studying the brain and how it works, what makes us us, explaining consciousness, those are all, interesting, at least to some of us, and huge topics that there may not currently be any kind of consensus on. The bigger point is that not having an answer puts you in the position of not having an answer. It doesn't put you in the position of justifying any panacea answer. It's like we've had people call in and say, well, if God didn't make the universe, then who did? Well, you're asking the wrong question. The correct question is based on the universe exists. There must be some explanation for it. What is the explanation? That question allows for the possibility that a God created the universe. It also allows for other possibilities. By saying, if God didn't, who did? You're narrowing the field. And you're narrowing it without any consideration that we don't know enough yet to narrow the field. So what's the explanation for how the universe came to exist? I don't know. There's a scientific theory about the origin of the cosmos as we understand it. It's called Big Bang Theory, which provides a good mathematical model. It is based on all of our current understanding, and it seems most likely correct, or at least as accurate as we can possibly get right now. There's a point at which, beyond the Planck time, we can't know. I mean, even the math breaks down. So beyond that is speculation. So I'm fine saying I believe that the current Big Bang Theory, the explanation of origins, is the best scientific explanation based on our current knowledge. I'm not claiming that it's absolute truth. Absolute truth is nonsense. We don't know hardly anything to absolute certainty. It's a good explanation. It fits the science. And as soon as we have better information that would change it, I'm fine with that too, because science progresses. It progresses because it asks questions. It never pretends to have an answer that is unquestionable. So when we're fine with saying, I don't know how it happened, somebody else who's uncomfortable with that would say, well, there's this God thing that people have been talking about forever. Why couldn't there be an infinite, transcendent, intelligent being who created the universe? I don't see any reason to think that any such thing exists, but it's one of the possibilities. But how could you possibly know anything about that God? I mean, you don't even have any good reason to presume that it's required as an explanation. And the more extraordinary a claim is, the more evidence that's needed to support it. So natural explanations are preferable to supernatural. And yet, people are so uncomfortable with not knowing that it seems somehow okay to say, you know what, when I got this answer, God did it, and that's good enough for me.
People are very uncomfortable in general with "I don't know," or "I can't see it." And I mean, to a certain extent, I can understand it, but we also have this great need to label everything, and that I've always found is kind of strange. People would rather know that they have cancer than not know what the problem is. And to a certain extent, I can understand that, but to a certain extent, I guess I just don't see it.
Well, my biggest thing isn't that there's any problem with hypothesizing about possible explanations.
Oh, of course.
That's what gets us to the point where we increase our understanding. If you think that the universe or man or whatever is the special creation of God, investigate that hypothesis and see if you can come up with evidence. But if you dismiss evidence, as the first caller did, and just say, it's something we take on faith, okay, fine. There's no reason why anybody else should be convinced to do that as well. From that standpoint, I can't distinguish between any two religions on the planet.
Yeah, we're not asking anybody to just believe us.
Yeah.
Or just don't believe us or whatever.
Thank you for tuning into the Atheist Experience. We have all the answers.
See
Take
you
our
next
word
week.
for it.
I mean, there are reasons to believe things, and you should have reasons to base your beliefs on rather than just, well, it feels good.
Yeah. As a reminder, the phone number is up on the screen. Anybody who doesn't get through today on the telephone or doesn't want to can email tv@atheist-community.org. We started early. We're taking calls. Anybody who wants to call in and talk about anything, we've got a few things we can discuss in the off time. And when the show's over, everybody involved in the show gets together and goes down to El Arroyo on 5th Street. We're on until 4:30. We'll be down at El Arroyo around 5 o'clock. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. Membership isn't a requirement. You can come down, have a good conversation, grab a bite to eat, get something to drink. As long as you're not coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch. I think what I'm going to do is shift from B words to, like R words at some time.
I have to come up with something different. Go through the alphabet.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the note on that. And we'll go ahead and we got another caller waiting. Is it Eric?
Yes.
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Is there still this big, huge delay?
No, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, people who believe in God believe it on faith, and your definition is they've been convinced at some point. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's the case.
So, and they don't have any scientific evidence or proof.
I don't know if they do or not. The thing is that when asked to present it, nobody's been able to.
Yeah, they don't have good evidence.
So if you don't believe in God,
correct?
Can you prove that he does not exist? Don't you not believe based on faith?
Nope.
No.
Do you believe in a God?
I don't know. I'm agnostic, not atheist.
Oh, why do you
Well,
think the agnostic and atheist are mutually exclusive?
Yeah, so am I.
Because you're agnostic,
Yeah,
so you don't know if God exists or not.
that is correct.
Depends
you're
on
not
what,
an atheist.
It depends. No. It depends on what you mean by knowledge. Theism and atheism address what you believe. Gnosticism and agnosticism address what you know or claim to know. Now, if you want to define knowledge as absolute certainty, then we're both agnostic atheists.
Okay,
We don't know that a God doesn't exist to an absolute certainty. But if you want to define knowledge in practical terms, the way we use it in everyday language, where we talk about we know something to some degree of certainty, if it's okay to say, I know there's no such thing as unicorns and leprechauns, if that qualifies as knowledge, then I'm a Gnostic theist. Because in the same sense that I know there's no leprechauns, I know there's no God.
Yes, but scientists didn't even believe that the Earth was round or that there were other galaxies at one point in time. We may have scientific knowledge to prove the existence or to prove the non-existence of God at some point.
Right. And if that happens, then we'll have a good reason to believe. But
Or
until
not
then, we're just
What's
pure
your good
speculation.
reason for not believing?
Do you believe in the Loch Ness Monster?
I don't know, but probably not.
Probably not.
Okay. So
Can
what
you prove
evidence?
the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist?
Yeah. What evidence do you have to not believe it? To say it doesn't exist?
See, the default position for any claim, and I don't care, religion, as supernatural, natural, anything, the default position of any claim is not belief. You don't believe things until they're proven wrong. The only way that you believe something is that you've been convinced. You can be convinced for good reasons or bad reasons, but you have to be convinced.
But you believe there is no God.
I do, but that's not. An atheist is simply somebody who does not believe in a God.
Right.
Theism is the state of accepting the claim as true. Anything short of theism, whether you call yourself an agnostic, secular, humanist, whatever, is atheism. But there are different degrees of atheism as well.
I got you.
There's weak atheists and strong atheists. I disbelieve claims about God because there's not evidence for them. I also happen to believe that there is no God. This isn't something that I can prove or demonstrate to an absolute certainty, but you can't really have evidence that there is no God except for the fact that you can have evidence of the non-existence of something if the existence of it would produce expected evidence. For example, I have evidence that there aren't naked cheerleaders in this room because I would expect to be able to see them. And boy, wouldn't that be fun. So I can demonstrate through evidence that
you believe there's oxygen in that room, but you can't see that either.
It's not about what you can see, it's about what you can demonstrate. We can demonstrate that there's oxygen in this room.
You can also demonstrate that there's not cheerleaders in that room.
Yeah, sure. By looking around. But only because we would expect that if there were cheerleaders in the room, we'd be able to see them. Everybody would be distracted. There are certain things that we would expect as far as evidence, and the absence of those bits of evidence is what lets us know that there's not cheerleaders here. It's not absolute. There could be one hiding behind the curtain that I don't know about. She may have been back there since the beginning of the show, quiet as a mouse, and I have no way of doing that until I check. So when somebody makes a claim about the existence of a God, we look around and we say, where's the evidence to support your claim? The burden of proof is on the person making the claim, not the person who disbelieves the claim. I don't have to prove that. It's just like, and for example, Christians call in all the time with an argument similar to this. And one thing that I'd ask them is, you don't believe in Ganesh. Can you prove that Ganesh doesn't exist? So let's be honest. They're using the exact same standards of evidence determination. They're using the same colloquial understanding of knowledge that I am. So when I claim that I believe there, in fact, are no gods, it's because out of all the possible God hypotheses I've been presented with, none of them have been able to present evidence to support the claim. I see no good reason to even hypothesize that a God exists because it's ill-defined and can't possibly serve as a good explanation for anything.
Well, you believe in the Big Bang, and you believe in science.
Right.
So where is the scientific proof that something can come from nothing.
Something didn't come from nothing. You don't understand the Big Bang if you think that's what it says.
Well, Stephen Hawking's his own theory has been proven wrong. He admitted it himself of what it's all based on in the first place, and he believed in God.
No, actually, Hawking doesn't believe in God.
He believed that with all the scientific evidence he had accrued, that there was quite possibly one.
No. Hawking does not believe in a God.
Okay.
However, it doesn't matter what Hawking believes.
It doesn't really matter. He's not some kind of authoritative source on the belief in God anyway.
But he is on the Big Bang Theory.
Right.
Okay, because he had some good ideas.
Theory on the black holes has been proven wrong.
If he came out tomorrow and said, there must be a God, look at all this evidence and stuff like that, I'd call him a nutter on that issue. Now, as regard to all his theories of how the universe started and how cosmology works and stuff like that, I'd say he was really good in that respect. As far as claiming there's a God, unless he's got really good evidence, he's a nutter.
Okay,
and there is.
I'm not really arguing with you. I just choose to not take on faith that there is no God, just as I choose.
No, and we're not.
And I don't.
And we don't. You've chosen to believe that there is.
And we don't.
It's not something I take on faith.
No one has shown me any good reason to believe it. No one has shown you any good real reason to believe in the Loch Ness Monster. Therefore, you probably don't.
You're not taking it on
until somebody
faith.
shows me good evidence to believe in a God. I don't.
But a certain amount of time ago, no one would have any good evidence to show that the world was round or that there are other galaxies.
Exactly.
But there were, though.
Exactly.
There were. Though.
Now we have evidence.
Your belief, your position on the truth has no effect on the truth.
I agree with that.
Okay.
If I had been around 8,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, and they said here's how planets and stars work, and there are, a billion other planets and stars out there, they would have been nuts. And you would have been justified in calling them nuts because we have absolutely no evidence and no reason to believe something like that. Now we do.
Until they provide evidence to support the claim, belief of the claim isn't justified.
Exactly. As of today.
It's not taking it on faith.
But the person who would have said, I don't know, would have been more in the middle. And when
but they would have been wrong in terms of evidence. As of today, regardless of the fact
humans can't have enough evidence. We have so much further to go that we could prove the non-existence or the existence at some point.
And until that day, the best thing that we can do is say you have not presented enough evidence.
No, here's the thing, and this is where the point of confusion is. Agnosticism, no matter how you want to define it, isn't some happy intellectual middle ground. It's an avoidance of the question. The question is, do you believe a claim? And the claim is X. X exists. You either believe that the claim is true or you don't. That says nothing
that's
about.
True. You
Hang,
can say,
let me finish. Let me finish.
You were just
please,
saying it's okay to say
please,
I don't know, and I'm saying I don't know.
Please let me finish.
Yes, sir.
There are two different claims. X exists, and you can believe it or disbelieve it. And there's a second claim, X does not exist. And you can either believe that or not believe that. Disbelieving X exists does not mean you necessarily accept the claim X does not exist. This is a fundamental, critical aspect of logic. This is where the distinction lies. Person makes a claim, X exists. I say, what is your evidence to support the claim? If they're unable to convince me of the truth of it, then I disbelieve it. I can also say to the person who says X does not exist, what's your evidence to support the claim? And if they don't have enough evidence to support their position, I disbelieve that one as well. I am non-committal on the truth factor, but I do not believe that it exists. This does not make me agnostic. It makes me an atheist.
Correct.
Because theism is defined as accepting that claim to be true. There's theism, atheism, and anti-theism. Just like there's moral, amoral, and immoral. Being amoral doesn't necessarily make you immoral, although you can be. And in this case, I'm both. I'm not claiming an absolute certainty that no God exists. I'm saying I believe it, and I can give you my reasons for it, and if you don't accept it, that's fine. But what I can tell you is that the people who make the claims that say God does exist have never, ever met the burden of proof.
I think neither side has, but that's fair. It's a fair conversation. I'm going to let you go.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
I don't know why. I realize that some of these concepts are. We're talking about how people use real language, really.
Yeah.
And the guy on the street says, I'm an agnostic. But you didn't really tell me anything. I say, hey, do you believe in a God? Oh, I'm agnostic. The actual answer is no, I'm agnostic.
Yeah.
Because I asked what you believed, not what you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care what anybody knows or claims to know. At all. I care about what people believe and why they believe it. Because your actions are based on your beliefs. If you believe something, tell me why you believe it. I'll either be convinced that you're correct because your evidence and argument is sound and good, and I'll believe it as well, or your evidence and argument is poor, and I won't be convinced. But I don't care if you say you know it. Oh, I know it. Well, maybe you're talking about absolute certainty. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're talking about a general kind of knowledge. I know there's no such thing as fairies or leprechauns, but you can't really, because maybe in one of the distant galaxies somewhere there are fairies, and they travel through wormholes to gardens. Yeah. You can come up with any kind of explanation you want. The point of the matter is that there are ways that we have of distinguishing between fact and fiction, of gaining a better understanding of reality. We have reliable methods. Logic and reasoning, or logical reasoning, being the primary foundation. There are rules of logic, and they exist because we can demonstrate that they're true. And then diverting away from mathematics, science makes use of logical reasoning in conjunction with testing, independent verification, repeated testing for consistency, falsification to demonstrate that a hypothesis is reliable and not producing an incidental result, and most importantly, peer review, because we're all fallible and we all make mistakes. So having your work reviewed by other experts in a particular field who can make sure that your test methodologies were correct, who can make sure that you did properly go about trying to falsify the information and verifying it, that you've done a number of studies, that's how something gets from being a hypothesis to a theory. Scientific theory isn't just, I've got a hunch. Scientific theory is the graduation point. It is the single most consistent and reliable method we have for gaining any accurate understanding of the universe. So when somebody tells me they don't believe in evidence, or they're willing to take something on faith despite evidence, feel free. I actually care whether or not my beliefs are true. Obviously you don't. We can demonstrate that faith's unreliable. Hell, the fact that there's 1,000 different denominations of Christianity, not to mention 1,000 different religions in the world that people are taking on faith, they can't all be right. They can, however, all be wrong. That is a valid possibility. So, I don't have any names. I got all the lines full, but I don't have any names up on the screen.
They will come.
Should we gamble? Let's talk about the pub crawl real quick.
That's right. You've got stuff on that.
Friday night, we had the first annual, and it may be annual, maybe semi-annual. Depends on how often we want to do it. But we had the first Atheist Experience pub crawl. Got some Schilling went and had some T-shirts made that said "Godless Pub Crawl, Atheist Community of Austin." And then on the back it said "Pubs Not Popes." We started off at the Dog and Duck, like normal, because we just go there. And it was actually, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was fantastic. It was a good outreach opportunity. It was a good publicity opportunity. We had 20 some odd people meet up there, and some others join us along the way. Some new people who hadn't signed up. Occasionally there'd be people who would come over and say, tell me about your organization. What are you about? Can I have some information on how to join? So that worked out well. We had no people who were openly hostile or caused any problems. We got tons of thumbs up and claps around 6th Street. Lots of people wanting to take pictures of the T-shirts, take pictures of us standing around. And as I mentioned, I ran into a couple people who were down there proselytizing and towing the Ray Comfort Way of the Master default apologist handbook. And so I ended up talking to him for about an hour, and I got an email from one, and we're actually carrying on a conversation. So it's pretty good stuff. Everything went really well. We had a good time. We ended up stopping at Katz's at the end of the night to grab a bite to eat. We're going to probably change the walking parking situation, because we started at 17th and then walked all the way to 6th and then did all the pubs and then had to walk all the way back up to 17th.
Yeah, you got to do that in reverse order.
Yeah, we'll have to park closer to town. So, all right, we've got actual callers online. Is it Cody?
Yeah, Cody.
How you doing?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. I actually had a question in what you believe in as far as metaphysics, and I'll put it in context with my own self, an occurrence that happened to me, and I just want to ask you what you guys think about it, as far as us having the energy and the capacity of being connected, even though being far away, as far as i.e. remote viewing and premonitions and so on and so forth. But me and my brother were I'd say probably the closest two people in each of our lives, and it's been that way all the way growing up. And
sure,
he was away in Kansas for college on a wrestling scholarship, and I had a dream one night, and I was in the passenger side of like a small single cab pickup truck, and we ran into a larger truck, and the cab around me just kind of crumpled in, and everything went black, everything went dark, and it was silence. There was nothing, and it's like I didn't exist anymore. But I had a very, very calm reassurance that it wasn't me, it's somebody else. And so when I woke up, I was literally sweating and felt like something there was something very, very wrong. And so the first person the first person that I felt like this had to deal with was my brother. And it was very, very early in the morning. I call him, and he was like, "Oh, what's going on, man?" He just woke up. I woke him up, and I said, "Dude, what happened, man? What not? Did anything happen?" It's like I knew something had happened, and I asked him, "Dude, what happened, man? Something happened." And he told me exactly what happened. And a friend of his that was on the wrestling team, that same exact thing happened. The guy was in the passenger side of a small pickup truck, ran into a larger truck, and and he died. And there are other things that happen like that with people that I'm close to, and I'll kind of spook them a little bit, but I feel that we only use less than 8% of our brains on.
Actually, that's not remotely true. No, we use all of our brain.
I think that there's some people, it's just like a muscle, you can exercise it, and there are some people that I think that have gifts are able to, do certain things that I think that science is actually starting to press upon it in its research. Even the FBI and
here's the thing. First of all, the myth of 8% of the brain or 10% of the brain is just that, it's a myth. You use all of your brain. What you use it for, and how efficient it is at it, okay, that's subject to investigation. But you use all your brain.
Right.
So the 8% thing kind of ends up getting misquoted. As to the metaphysical connection, I don't happen to believe that any such thing exists.
Right.
And if
what if a certain thing like that happened to you? How would you take it?
Yeah. Here's the thing. We don't have a complete understanding of how the brain works. But here's what we know. People don't always remember their dreams. And not all of your dreams come true.
Sure.
So while it's possible that you may have had a prophetic dream or some kind of remote experience, it's possible in the theoretical sense, there's no reason to leap to the conclusion that that's actually what happened. Because we tend to remember the hisses. The hisses? We tend to remember the hits and forget the misses. It's like saying, I was thinking about so-and-so and they called on the phone. Well,
right.
How about all the other times you were thinking about them and they didn't call? So what needs to happen in order to make this, I'm not saying that, this couldn't possibly happen. There's no mechanism that we know of that could possibly account for this.
Right.
And there's no one who's been able to reliably demonstrate any phenomena like this at all. I mean, James Randi's had $1 million award for years to anybody who could demonstrate under scientifically testable conditions that they have any kind of ability like that.
Actually, have you seen that Mythbusters episode where they tested ESP on a plant? They hooked it up with a bunch of electrodes and
I've seen every Mythbusters episode.
Yeah. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah. What do you think about? I thought that was pretty cool, kind of.
I've seen them all, and you've seen most of them.
Yeah, pretty much all of them. So.
But it's not so much that
I just think that the occurrence that I would want to call my brother and actually. That's the first time that anything like that ever happened to me. You know? It's like, why would I want to call him out of everybody? It's like I felt very scared for him because he was at the same party where this happened. There was a lot of alcohol, so I was kind of were actually like in fear of his life when I called it. That could have been him in the passenger seat.
Right.
Out of everybody that I knew, like, why would I want to call him, or why did I have a fear that something had happened? And I didn't ask him, did anything happen? I said, what happened, dude? Something happened.
I got you. There are lots and lots of stories like this. There are so many things that people just,
that are coincidence, right?
Well,
what are the odds of that?
It's not,
you're a
it's not
you
just
have a mathematician-like way of thinking.
It's not just coincidence that I'm talking about. Coincidences do occur. The thing that most people tend to overlook is that, number one, we're all very similar. And we have similar experiences, similar fears, similar thoughts. It's not surprising at all to me that someone would have a dream about somebody they care about where something bad happened, and they call and they find out that something bad happened. Only thing is that you didn't dream about your brother, you dreamed about some other guy. You could have dreamed about your brother, and your brother could have been in the accident, and it still would have been no more evidence of a true phenomena. What we need is...
What would you put a number on that? What do you think the odds of something like that happening? Like 1 in a million?
I'd say the probability of that happening is 1, as in 100%.
Sure, because it happened, and I understand that.
And not just because it happened, but because over the course of your lifetime, you have a whole bunch of dreams and thoughts and feelings and concerns, and you think about the people that you're caring about. At some point, especially, one of the things that happens is with this thing about calling somebody, and they picked up the phone and they were calling you, and you guys seem to have magically been connected. That's happened twice with me and my mom. But when I look back on it and think about it, there's
the chances of that occurring are just very, very widely marginalized, and
Well, but at the same time, the thing is that people overlooked is that there's a certain amount of time that goes by where if you haven't talked to your mother or your brother or some other family member, they end up being on your mind more predominantly. There's been this gap. So the phone call thing is incredibly likely. The dream thing is you had a dream about somebody getting in a car accident, and you called your brother, and he had been to a party with somebody who got into a car accident.
Right. It was a good friend of him, and they were connected.
Yeah.
And so it was like the rules actually state that you could be in the same room or you could be a state away. And but we actually emit and project like energies, just like a radio signal. You can't see the signal, right? But they build things that can pick it up. I think that our minds and brains are capable of actually picking up as well as projecting and being able to be in sync with. Although you can't see the radio signal, how do you know it exists?
Well, because we can measure radio signals. And as soon as you demonstrate that the brain does anything like that, then you've got a scientific explanation. Then you've got a phenomena worth investigating. But that's not the case. Right. And we're so bad with probability and numbers. And I know you touched on this briefly earlier. But just as an example, I could say, okay, everybody out there, I want you all to pick a number between 1 and 100. Any number. Don't tell me what it is. And then I could say
1% that'll call in and say, "Oh my God."
Yeah, I could say, okay, you're thinking of 37. 99% of the people out there think that's the suckiest trick in the world. But somebody out there is going, "Oh my God, how do you do that?" It's selective. You're selectively addressing an issue, and I'm not trying to, belittle the experience you had. I believe you. I have no problem with it. I just don't necessarily know that leaping to the idea that there's some metaphysical, supernatural, unexplained connection is in fact the best explanation. But even if it was, we'd need evidence to support it, and not just anecdotal stuff.
Right. What do you think about Edward Casey? Are you well read on Edward Casey
the
at all?
Spirit talker guy?
Right.
I think it's hogwash, just like
modern, quote unquote, modern prophet.
I think it's hogwash. I think it's. In that case, it's not much different from the stuff of Nostradamus, where people are seeing what they want to see. It's really easy to kind of reinterpret prophecy after the fact.
Right. Did you know Edward Casey, without any doctorates or any degrees, he actually there's a thing that we use today, is a medical procedure that we still use today that he developed without any medical research. He actually people would come to him with an ailment, and I don't know, I guess take it for what it's worth, but if you actually read on Edward Casey and his like medical accomplishments and the foresight about what's actually in a human body without having any idea And as far
Well,
especially
just
with
because
the,
just because somebody's not formally educated doesn't mean they have no idea. That's the other thing is
yeah.
that we
But
overemphasize.
the things that he did is just amazing.
Take a look
I
at
don't
all.
know, well,
all
I
the
don't want
people-
to take up too much of your time, but
Sure.
Well, but I just leave you with the thought that if you believe for certain that we are not capable of such things, then well, of course, you'll write off everything as being, just a matter
But that's
of
not
odds.
the case.
And
And if, in the same aspect, if you believe that we truly do, then there are things that you will see, like, oh yeah, well,
Yeah.
this is what I've been, because you're wanting it to happen. At the
I
same
said
time.
earlier that it's theoretically possible. It just needs a mechanism to explain it. I don't happen to believe it's
Right.
true, but I don't necessarily believe that it's impossible. But
Right.
the reason
We're just not at the level right now to create such a.
well, there's no reason to think any
find that
other
it's-
levels exist. The phenomenon needs to be demonstrated.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see of any mechanism that would make something like that possible. I mean, our brains are not radios, and they cannot transmit radio waves. I mean, that's just not what they're made
Well,
of.
it's
Can't be done.
an example of what you can and can't see.
Well,
you
well,
know?
I know, but there are things that we can and can't do, and I can't conceive of any mechanism where I could somehow telepathically communicate with you or whatever. Now, again, if they, come out with some new research in the next 5, 10, 200 years that says it actually is possible and here's a way that you can do it, wow, that's
I wonder
really
why
cool
the
and that's
FBI
neat.
pays sidekicks.
But
What's that?
I wonder why the FBI actually spends money and pays to hire like sidekicks to help them. Do you think
because they've got too much of a budget.
The thing is, no psychics ever recovered a missing child. Happens all the time. Some parent's child gets kidnapped, and psychics come in attempting to lead the police somewhere, and there's not a single example of a psychic actually finding and saving a kidnapped child. What happens is they waste police time, energy, and resources by directing the investigation in other ways. No supernatural claim, no psychic claim has ever been demonstrated under any testable conditions, and every time we try to test, they fail.
But why does our own government actually spend money in the hiring of these individuals that they believe to be specialists? I mean,
Because
there must be some sort of research on the higher level.
Because
our
some of them
government.
believe that they have special abilities. That doesn't make them right.
Right.
People can be wrong.
You would think
I mean-
they would have some sort of research before they go and.
They did. They
and
spent
money.
years for
Yeah.
researching at the Stanford Institute, and not Stanford, the real university, but the Psychic Research Center that's next to it. And what they found after spending millions and millions and millions of tax dollars is that there's no evidence that any of this occurs. Now, do they still end up putting some of them on a budget from time to time? Sure, but they also paid $30,000 for a toilet seat. Nobody said that they're right or smart. Whether or not
Well,
they
I just
spend
think they
money-
must have found something. I mean,
No. If people had psychic powers, don't you think we'd
But they
know
can't
it?
put it in our. Well, sure, but they can't put it in the school curriculum if they did find something
No,
because then
no,
people
no.
start going nuts.
We don't need to go off on any kind of conspiracy stuff. If people actually had psychic powers, we'd all know it. It'd be front page news. People would be able to demonstrate this clearly and objectively. Why don't psychics win the damn lottery? Why don't they take the $1 million challenge? Oh, we can't benefit from our abilities because it doesn't work that way. Whatever higher power is allowing me to see things won't do it if I'm doing it for my own benefit. Great. Take the challenge and give them $1 million to starving kids. Then you're not doing it for your own benefit. None of them do. None of them ever demonstrate any phenomena, let alone pass a test of how it occurs, because they can't demonstrate that it occurs at all. Now, I don't necessarily believe that it's impossible or that it can never happen. I just think that it's, at this point, ridiculously unlikely, and certainly belief isn't justified. As soon as somebody demonstrates it, I'm right there. Hell, I'd love to be psychic, wouldn't you?
I'd take it any day.
Yeah.
But like I say, it's just no evidence for it. I don't see anything. So
Well, guys, hey, y'all enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and thanks for taking my call.
Sure. Thanks, Cody.
thanks for calling.
We've got, is it Richard?
Yeah,
How you doing, Richard?
not too bad.
I'm told that you have proof of the existence of God.
I have incontrovertible proof of God.
Bring it on.
Sports.
What?
Sports. Every team that has ever won has thanked God for the win.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all had faith and God repaid it.
Holy crap. And clearly God likes them more than the other team that was
course.
praying for the
Well,
win.
obviously the losers had a player that had doubt,
Oh,
It was
Faith
their
of a
lack of
mustard
faith.
seed, God says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can do anything.
except for one thing, Lance Armstrong's an atheist and won the Tour de France 7 times.
And he lost the testicle, didn't he?
I-
Praise God. Well, y'all are...
You know how many testicles I give up to win the Tour de
France?
France 7 times and be as wealthy as he is?
Whew. We do not need to go there.
Thanks. Thanks, Richard. That was a great call. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah. God punished him by giving him, cancer all over his body. Oh, but he pulled through. Yeah. No, Lance, of course, lives in the area. I don't know him, never met him, don't have anything to do with him. But I do have a great appreciation for the fact that he is openly atheist. Not rabid in your face atheist, and certainly not as mean as I am. But he's a testament to somebody who's had difficult circumstances, not only pulled through but excelled, and done so without platitudes and oh, thank God, Okay, great. It's kind of insulting in a way. One of the guys that I talked to down 6th Street this week. The guy who was once I get an explanation, there's no reason for me to look any further because God works as the explanation. And I was like, well, what is your evidence that has convinced you to believe in God's existence? And his, after getting through all the rigmarole of a building is designed because it has a designer, and we can see that by all that. It was, well, I've stopped rainstorms 3 times in a row.
Wow.
And
Can he do it a 4th?
And I was like, what? That your evidence of the existence of God is that 3 times you've gone out in the rain or out before the rain, when the weatherman has predicted rain, and prayed that God won't bring rain, and it didn't rain. How completely arrogant and stupid is that? There are people who are living in poverty, dying of hunger, dying of AIDS, cancer, and you think that you're so important that God's going to stop the rain for you 3 times? Well, how is what you did any different from the Native American who goes out and dances around and it starts raining and he says, okay, I did the dance and it rained, therefore my dance caused the rain. And next time we want it to rain, I'm going to go out and dance. But I got to make sure I get it just right. So subtly it develops into this really complicated rain dance, which is really doing nothing. You think what on earth was so important that God stopped the rain for you while people are dying, people are starving? What kind of colossal arrogance is that? I think it's the same arrogance that says, once I get the answer, God did it, I don't need to look any further. Wow. I think it's the same arrogance that says, well, God lets me do miracles, but I'm not going to do a miracle for you because you're not worthy, which is exactly what he told me. He's out there trying to save my soul, but my soul's not worthy of a miracle. His is. His is worthy of 3. But mine's not worthy of a miracle. I'm just a godless heathen. Why would God want to do a miracle to save my soul? I'm not important. Clearly, if I wanted the rain to stop, I guess I should have just prayed. It poured the other day. I wonder who was praying for it to rain. And I wonder who was praying for it to stop. Why is God like you better? This holier-than-thou crap is not only one of the things that actually irritates people, it's one of the reasons why I'm okay with scoffing and ridiculing. If you have a ridiculous idea, that by definition means it's deserving of ridicule. But if you're arrogant, God loves me and he let me do miracles. Screw you. I was a fundamentalist Christian for 25 some odd years. I was studying to be a minister. My only goal was to fulfill the obligation of 1 Peter 3:15 and be prepared at all times to provide an explanation for the faith that was within me, to lead other people to Christ. And what I found in the process of my investigation is that my former beliefs were unjustified, and so I changed my mind because I was willing to go where the evidence led and not lead the evidence where I wanted it to go. I did not just do this as an intellectual pursuit. I was a committed, sincere believer. I hit my knees and I prayed for guidance, and I studied. And I didn't just study the Bible, which might have let me still be a Christian. Yeah. I studied the arguments of people who were challenging the Bible, because the truth has nothing to fear from investigation. And when somebody says, this particular passage in the Bible is immoral, This particular passage contradicts science. This particular passage contradicts this particular passage. Oh, you can't get the book straight. There's a reason why there's 4 Gospels and 3 of them are called synoptic. It's because this one's a little bit different, and it's different on statements of fact. And by the way, these 3 aren't that synoptic anyway. But that's the process that I went through. And you're saying, seriously, that I, as a sincere believer, desperately seeking for God to give me the explanations, give me the evidence, give me the method to lead more people to Christ, out of all sincerity, that wasn't worth a thing, but you wanted the rain to stop and God did it for you 3 times in a row? Phew! You're the man. You're the chosen one. I want the knife. You're so special. Anyway, is it Ann or Annie?
Hello, my name is Ann.
Hi, Ann.
Hi. Boy, I miss Madeline when I'm listening to you all. You just go on and on and on, and you let that guy 2 times back just rattle about nothing, and it's boring.
Yeah, she
Okay,
cut him
now
off
listen,
quick, didn't she?
Here's what I've got to say.
Go ahead.
Instead of fighting with these right-wing Christians, say something interesting, intellectual about atheism. Because, for example, what about the fact that most right-wing Christians don't think that atheists or agnostics or non-believers, whatever category you want to put those people in, have no ethics? For me, that makes me really mad because I'm an extremely ethical person. I have very high compassion and humanity. I have very moral ways of living, and it's not because of Jesus or God. And it really offends me when they assume that if you do not believe in God, that you are not a moral, ethical, compassionate person.
Well, I think to a certain extent they've completely left any authority, anything to do with morality and ethics behind.
Well, I have
because they have this idea.
I don't have to have a moral authority like God or somebody.
Well, it's not just that. It's that I'm a Christian, and
no, he's not. He's pretending to be one for this argument.
I'm a Christian. And you should believe in God because, well, we have the Bible. And if you don't...
I know all that, but I'm talking
and
about...
if you don't...
Instead of putting the argument on their terms...
Well, let me finish, though. And if you don't believe, well, hey, I guess you're just going to go to hell. And well, darn.
Well,
and that's the end of the discussion. If they are going to abandon their argument so easily...
That's not what I said. What I said was... Atheists need to be more positive instead of always answering goofy questions by Christians or always being on the defensive with this Christian crap.
There are some people who would say that we are.
About how one can live a joyful, wonderful, happy, compassionate, good to your fellow person life without God.
Yeah, some people would say that we already do that. I don't know how many shows you watch. We talk about it on occasion, about how the idea that there's no afterlife makes this life, the only one we know of, the single most precious thing possible, and the best thing you can possibly do is live it as best you can and treat people right the first time.
I think so.
There are plenty of positive things about atheism. We talk about them on occasion. My big thing is that these are things that shouldn't need to be said. We're responding to accusations. The one you talked about being immoral, the Boy Scouts of America do this with regard to atheists and homosexuals. They make the claim, the Boy Scouts of America are trying to portray a positive moral image, and now we're going to exclude atheists and homosexuals. And their justification is that atheists and homosexuals can't possibly be moral. And to them, I say, screw you. There's no evidence that atheists are any less moral than anybody else. They're any less ethical. As a matter of fact, there's good evidence that we may in fact be more ethical and more moral. Because one of the things is, sure, I'm going to disregard the Christian view of sin, and I'm going to ignore specific dictates from them about what qualifies. Whoops, did we lose Ann? Probably. Sorry. I'm going to ignore from them specific dictates about what qualifies from sin because I don't agree with them. I don't agree that thoughts are a crime. Their book says that thought is the greatest crime possible. There's only one sin that's unforgivable, and that's apostasy, according to Christianity. That's thought crime. That says that if I'm unable to believe it, I've done something worse than genocide, worse than child rape, worse than murder, torture, lying, stealing. I don't believe, and that's the worst thing I can do. Now, there are people who will define apostasy different ways, and they'll say, no, we're only talking about blaspheming the Holy Spirit, which is contributing something God did to something Satan did. Okay, I don't believe in that numbskull either, so obviously I'm not going to qualify. The fact of the matter is, I don't believe it, and I ridicule it. And I would say openly, and have many times, that even if somebody could demonstrate that the God of the Bible was real, there's no way I'd worship him. This guy is a twisted, immoral, just absurd and obscene piece of work. Belief has nothing to do with whether or not you worship.
There's very often those people that say God requires faith because if there weren't faith, if he just came down and stomped down on Fifth Avenue, everybody said, "Look at me, I'm real." Yeah. Then everyone would immediately start worshiping. We'd all get down on our knees and say, "Oh my God, God's real," and that's not what he wants. He wants you to willingly come to him. Well, there are a lot of laws in this country that people know for a fact exist and for a fact get punished for, and yet they still flout them.
There are a lot of chemicals that people know for a fact are likely to kill you, and yet they take them anyway.
Exactly. So just because God comes down and stomps around and proves to me that he's real, if he comes down and says, yes, you read that book over there and that's right on, that's absolutely me, I'm still not going to worship him. I'll believe he exists, absolutely, but he's still a prick.
But for Ann's sake, we got another caller that I'm going to go to. Somebody remind me. I will take the last minute to be absolutely positive, upbeat positive, before we go.
Okay.
Is it Al?
Upbeat positive.
Hello?
Okay. Is it Al?
Oh.
Yeah. It's Al.
Yeah, big delay. Hey, Al, how you doing?
I'm fine. One of the biggest crimes that I think is abusing children. I mean, I think that's one of the worst things you can do is to abuse a child. And the Catholic Church has never, in fact, and the Pope has never, they have never apologized for what their priests did to children.
Did? Why you? They're still doing it. And you know what the
That's
Catholic
right.
Church does? They have multiple rehabilitation centers where they send these pedophile priests before shipping them off to new churches. Instead of admitting a problem, instead of fighting a problem, they just set up rehab centers. This is so big a problem that they have more than one rehab center for priests with this issue.
Right.
And they're not the only ones.
Right. I mean, I used to believe and when I used to be in a choir when I was a kid, and we used to sing a song called Jesus Loves All the Little Children, All the Children of the World. Red and yellow, black and white, they're precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. Well, how come all these children get abused? How come there's children starving in the world? I mean, it's ludicrous to believe in a religion that seems to disregard the reality of innocent children being starved and abused, not only sexually but mentally and physically, and it's ludicrous to me. So that's one of the main reasons, that I'm a disbeliever, an atheist.
And as bad as it is to watch, relatively well-off American kids, for instance, singing that, it's even worse to think that, again, ministers and missionaries are convincing kids overseas in third world countries to sing this. God loves you. He doesn't really care that you're starving and that your parents died of malaria, but he loves you anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's really hard.
Yeah, in some cases, I mean, the problem of evil as a philosophical argument is something that I think most religions are going to have difficulty overcoming. In this case, it goes beyond that, because we're not just talking about the problem of evil in the terms of simple suffering. We're talking about the problem of evil when the suffering is coming directly from the same people who are trying to get you to believe this.
Right.
The priests are in a position of authority, and they're abusing their position in order to abuse children. I mean, that's even greater than the traditional problem of evil, because the suffering is coming from the same place. Although I will say it's kind of consistent, because if you read, if you read Paul in Romans, essentially you've got Adam sinned and brought sin into the world, so we're all doomed and we're loathsome creatures. But that wasn't enough. So God creates laws that He knows people can't hold up to in order to damn them further. That's the purpose of the law, according to Paul in Christianity, is to damn them further. And then He provides the loopholes because He knows you can't live up to the law. He provides a loophole so you don't have to live up to the law, but He wants you to live up to the law, but He knows you can't, so you got a loophole, but it doesn't matter. It's nonsense. It's absolutely absurd.
Right. And so God does not, the reason God does not intervene on these children's behalf is because there is no God.
Yeah.
So, anyway. But thanks for taking my call, and good
Sure.
show.
Thanks a lot, Al. We got like 2.5 minutes left, and this will probably be the last caller. Vivian?
Hi.
How you doing?
My name's Vivian. I'm 26, okay? My family told me we were Baptists or whatever, and we should believe in this and that. But I think sometimes people go through so much, trauma in their life, they're looking for leadership. So they tend to look towards, the person that they think, like your mom and dad, you look up to them because you think they know what they're talking about. Well, if you can take a couple of words and you can put it together and you can, make it sound good, and people are lost, they tend to follow you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's a looking for leadership. It's a looking for companionship and fellowship.
Companionship, leadership, fellowship. It's the question. I've been to many different types of churches and religion, and I always ask the preacher, how many devils are in the church? Well, he said, he says, well, I don't know. Well, you're the preacher, you don't know. People go to church, and then now, this day and time, people are just going just to say, oh, I'm saved. But it's the person next to you.
And I find that most of them I end up talking to don't know what they believe really or why they believe it.
Well, let me tell you, look, if the person next to the lady that's all dolled up, if her dress is too short, then, they tend to whisper, oh, she must be a hoe or something. And the thing about it is, well, that means you're judging that person, and you're judging her in church. So how religious are you?
We got less than a minute. I'm going to go ahead and let you go, Vivian. We appreciate the call. As a reminder, anybody who didn't get through on the telephone today can email tv@atheist-community.org.
Thank you. I'm glad y'all do this show. Y'all rock.
Thank you, Vivian.
Thanks for calling.
Appreciate the call. You can also visit the website at www.atheist-community.org, and you can join us for dinner after the show. We'll be down at El Arroyo on 5th Street here in just about 30 minutes, and then we'll be down there to 7 o'clock. Thanks to all the crew and everybody for watching. The positive note that I want to say is something similar to said last week. Life is its own reward. One of the nice things about atheism is that there's no dogma, no code, no sense of divisiveness, no us and them mentality. You're free to be who you are, love whoever you want, and appreciate and enjoy life, and make sure that you do it well. That's it.